Power, respect, fear. Those were the three things that defined Kang Moretti. He didn't talk much. He didn't need to. When he entered a room, silence followed. When he gave an order, no one questioned it. Kang was the kind of man who built his name from nothing. By 33, he had already become one of the most feared mafia heads in the city. People didn't just obey him, they respected him. Even his enemies kept their distance. But all that power, all that pride, meant nothing after that night. It was raining hard. The kind of rain that made the streets look like rivers. Kang was driving back from a family gathering, one hand on the wheel, the other resting by the window. June, his younger stepbrother, sat in the passenger seat. They weren't enemies. Not even close. They were opposites, but still brothers. June was talkative, playful, the kind of man who smiled easily. Kang, on the other hand, rarely showed emotion, always calm, always unreadable. Still quiet as ever, June joked, glancing over. You know, sometimes I wonder if you enjoy scaring people. Kang didn't look at him. Maybe, he said simply. Dad said we'll be expanding to Busan soon, June continued. That's not my concern, Kang muttered, eyes fixed on the road. Of course it is, June said. You're the reason this empire exists. Kang didn't answer. He had never cared for praise or conversation. His focus was on the storm outside. The wipers moved fast, but the rain was too much. The sound of thunder filled the car, and visibility was almost gone. Then, in a second, everything changed. Headlights appeared ahead, bright, blinding, coming fast from the wrong lane. June's voice broke the silence. Gang. Kang turned the wheel sharply, but the tires lost grip. The car spun across the slick road, hit the guardrail, then flipped. The metal crushed. The glass shattered. A loud crash followed, then nothing. When June opened his eyes, the car was upside down. Rain poured through the shattered windshield. He felt blood on his face, pain in his shoulder, but he was alive. Gang. He shouted, struggling to unbuckle himself. Kang was next to him, barely moving. The airbag had exploded, and blood streamed down his forehead. June crawled toward him, his voice breaking. Don't close your eyes, please. Kang didn't respond. His hand twitched, trying to reach him. By the time help arrived, Kang had already gone still. He was breathing, but barely. When he woke up days later, the world was gone. He could hear machines, voices, and the faint echo of footsteps, but nothing else. No light. No shapes. Just darkness. The kind of darkness that felt alive, heavy, endless, suffocating. The doctor's voice was calm, but every word cut deep. The accident caused severe trauma to your optic nerves. I'm sorry, Mr. Moretti. The damage is permanent. Kang didn't speak. He sat there quietly as the doctor explained his blindness like it was a weather report. He didn't ask questions. He didn't react. He just turned his face away, toward nothing. June came to visit every day. He tried to talk, tried to make things lighter, but Kang didn't say a word to him. Not one. He just sat in silence, the kind that hurt more than any insult. June blamed himself for the accident. Everyone knew Kang had pushed him out before the car flipped, saving his life. But Kang never once mentioned it. He didn't want gratitude. He didn't want pity. He wanted his sight back. After weeks in the hospital, he went home. Back to the mansion that once echoed with his authority. The staff looked at him differently now. They spoke softer, walked slower around him. He hated it. He refused help from anyone. He tried doing everything on his own, and failed. Once, he broke a glass trying to pour water. Another time, he fell down the stairs. Every failure burned his pride more than the pain itself. He stopped attending meetings. He stopped speaking. His father, tired and disappointed, quietly handed control of the family business to June. And just like that, the empire that Kang built slipped away from him. He spent most of his days locked inside his room. Sometimes, he'd sit by the window, listening to the rain. Other times, head pace around the hallways, memorizing the mansion's layout by touch. He moved like a ghost in his own home. Until one afternoon, his father brought someone new. A woman. She stood silently in the doorway, head slightly bowed, her presence calm. Her name was Elena. She was introduced as his personal assistant. Her job was to help him eat, dress, move around, and handle his day-to-day life. Kang didn't even turn his head toward her when she was introduced. He just said, coldly, "I don't need help." His father replied, "You do. And she's staying." After that, the house changed again. Elena moved quietly, careful not to disturb him. She never spoke unless he spoke first, and he rarely did. At first, Kang ignored her completely. When she tried to help him eat, he turned his face away. When she asked if he needed something, he acted like she wasn't there. But she didn't give up. Day after day, she stayed calm. She cooked for him, cleaned his room, read out the letters people sent. Sometimes, he'd wake up to the faint sound of her humming while sweeping the hallway. He never asked who she was. He didn't care. But every once in a while, when she walked past him, he'd stop and listen, not to her words, but to her silence. It was different. There was something peaceful about it. He didn't know it yet. But that quiet woman, the one who moved softly through his darkness, was about to bring light into his life again. And that same light would one day destroy everything he had left. Elena arrived quietly, and she stayed that way. She didn't ask questions. She didn't complain. She didn't even look for attention. Every morning, she'd come into Kang's room with a soft knock before opening the door. He never answered. But she'd still walk in, place his breakfast on the small table beside the bed, and say the same words every day. "Your food is ready." Then she'd leave. No chatter. No nervous laughter. Just her voice, calm and steady, like she had no fear of him. Most people were scared to even stand near Kang. He didn't yell or threaten anyone. He didn't need to. His silence was enough to make people uneasy. But not her. At first, Kang didn't even care to learn her name. She was just another stranger in a house full of people who pitied him. He ignored her presence completely. Days passed like that. Elena worked quietly, serving meals, reading letters aloud from his associates, organizing his medication. She never said more than necessary. One evening, Kang sat in the dark study, listening to the rain again. He had memorized every sound in that room, the ticking clock, the faint hum of electricity, the drops hitting the glass. But that night, there was another sound. The sound of pages turning. He frowned. "Who's there?" Elena's voice came gently. "It's me. You forgot your dinner." "I didn't forget," he muttered. "You haven't eaten since morning," she replied quietly. He didn't respond. A long silence filled the room. Then, softly, she placed the tray near him and left again. It wasn't pity. It wasn't sympathy. It was something else, a kind of patience that he couldn't understand. For weeks, this continued. She'd come and go without disturbing his peace. Sometimes, he'd hear her humming faintly while she worked in the next room. A small, soft melody that made the air feel less heavy. Kang never said anything about it. But he started listening for that sound each evening. He still didn't know who she really was. No one told him, and he never asked. If he had, maybe things would have been different. Because Elena wasn't there just by chance. Her story had started years ago, long before she ever stepped into that mansion. Her mother, a widowed housemaid, had worked for the Moretti family for years. Loyal, honest, and hardworking. Until one day, she was dismissed unfairly after being accused of stealing jewelry that never existed. The shame and stress broke her. She fell sick and died a few months later. Elena never forgot the humiliation. The Morettis ruined her mother's name, and to them, that was the end of it. But for Elena, the wound stayed open. So when she was called back to work as Kang's personal assistant, as a compensation for what had been done, she accepted. Not out of gratitude, but because life had brought her back to the same family that destroyed hers. She had promised herself she would stay strong. No anger. No bitterness. She would simply do her job, and nothing more. But from the first day she saw Kang, sitting there in silence with his empty stare and tired hands, she couldn't bring herself to hate him. He wasn't the man she expected. He wasn't cruel or loud. He was broken, trapped inside a world that no longer had light. That realization made her soften. And slowly, she found herself caring for someone she had sworn to despise. One night, while cleaning his desk, Elena accidentally brushed against his hand. He flinched instantly. "Don't touch me," he said coldly. She froze. "I'm sorry." He didn't say another word. But after she left, he sat there for a long time, hand clenched, breathing uneven. It had been months since anyone had touched him like that. Days turned into weeks. The house, once silent and cold, started to change in small ways. Kang began sitting closer to where she usually worked. He started asking questions, short ones. "What time is it? Who came today? Where's June?" It wasn't much, but for Elena, it meant everything. It was the first time he had acknowledged her at all. One afternoon, while she helped him eat, he said quietly, "You're different from the others." She looked at him, unsure what to say. He turned his face toward the window and added, "They walk like I'm a ghost." "You don't." Elena didn't reply. She just smiled faintly and continued feeding him. He didn't see it, but something in her silence felt warm. That night, Kang sat on his bed long after she left, unable to sleep. For the first time since the accident, his thoughts weren't just about the darkness. They were about her, the quiet woman who walked through it without fear. He didn't know what was changing inside him. He only knew one thing. For the first time in months, he didn't hate waking up the next morning. Weeks passed. The house began to feel alive again, not loud, not busy, but alive in a quiet way. Elena had fallen into a steady routine. She woke up before dawn, prepared Kang's breakfast, then went about her chores without waiting for orders. Every meal was made with care. Every word she spoke was measured. Kang had started noticing things: the sound of her footsteps, the way she stirred his coffee exactly twice, the faint scent of vanilla she left behind. He still didn't talk much. But now, when she wasn't around, the silence bothered him. Sometimes, he'd reach for the chair beside him, expecting to hear her voice, only to find it empty. That emptiness felt heavier each day. One morning, while she helped him dress, Kang asked quietly, "Why do you stay?" Elena froze for a second, surprised. He had never asked her a personal question before. She looked at him and said softly, "Because it's my job." Kang turned his head slightly. "That's not what I asked." Elena stayed silent. She wanted to tell him the truth, that she didn't really know why she stayed. That every time she thought about leaving, something in her made her stop. But she didn't. She just whispered, "It's easier to stay than to start over." He nodded once and said nothing more. For the rest of that morning, neither spoke again, but something had shifted. A quiet understanding. That same afternoon, the sound of an engine echoed from outside. June had returned. It had been months since he last visited the mansion. Now that he was running the family business, his life was full of meetings, travel, and people who admired him. He was charming, smooth-talking, well-dressed, and loved attention. But the moment he stepped into Kang's home, the air changed. June entered the living room, his smile wide. "Brother," he greeted cheerfully, "I miss this place." Kang sat on the sofa, calm as always. "You came." "Of course," June said. "It's been too long. You should see how things are running now." Kang's voice stayed flat. "I can't." June's smile faded slightly. "Right. I didn't mean it that way." There was a short silence. Then Elena entered the room with tea. She bowed slightly and began placing the cups down. June's eyes followed her immediately. He had never seen her before. Her movements were graceful, slow, careful, confident. She didn't look like the maids or the servants he remembered. When she turned slightly to hand the cup to Kang, June saw her face clearly for the first time. Something about her, the calmness, the softness in her expression, made him pause. Kang noticed the silence and asked, Who's there? Elena replied quietly, "It's me." "She's my assistant," Kang added, almost as if sensing June's curiosity. "Oh," June said with a small smile. "I see." He turned his eyes back to her and nodded slightly. "Nice to meet you." Elena simply said, "Welcome back," and left the room. But that short moment stayed in June's mind longer than it should have. After she left, he leaned back in his chair and glanced at his brother. "You seem to have good help now," he said casually. Kang didn't reply. "She's quiet," June continued. "I like that." Still, Kang said nothing. But something about the tone in June's voice made him frown slightly. That night, June stayed for dinner. He talked about business, plans, and how well things were running. Kang barely responded, but June didn't seem to mind. He was comfortable talking. Elena served the meal, as always. Each time she came close, June's eyes followed her. He wasn't subtle about it. Elena noticed, but ignored it. Kang didn't. When June finally left, the house went quiet again. Elena cleaned up, as usual, and turned to leave. But Kang stopped her. "Elena," he said. She turned back. "Yes?" "Don't talk to him more than you need to." Her brows furrowed slightly. "Why?" Kang didn't know how to answer. He couldn't tell her that the way June looked at her made his stomach twist. He couldn't admit he cared. So he just said coldly, "He's not someone you can trust easily." She nodded silently and walked out. But that night, she didn't sleep well. Neither did Kang. He kept hearing June's voice, his laughter, his careless charm. And somewhere inside, for the first time in his life, Kang felt something he had never known before: jealousy. He didn't know what to do with it. He didn't even understand it. But the thought of June's eyes on her made the darkness around him feel heavier than ever. Outside, the rain started again. And for the first time, Kang wasn't thinking about what he lost. He was thinking about what he was afraid to lose next. After June's first visit, things changed, quietly, almost unnoticeably. He started showing up more often. Sometimes with an excuse, to bring reports, to check on Kang, to see how things were going. But everyone knew he didn't have to come that often. Each time he arrived, he'd bring expensive gifts, greet everyone warmly, and fill the house with noise Kang didn't like. And every time, Elena would be the one opening the door for him. At first, their exchanges were brief, polite greetings, nothing more. But little by little, the conversations started to stretch. June would ask harmless questions. "How long have you worked here? Is Kang treating you well? Do you like it here?" Elena kept her answers short. "Yes. He's kind. I'm fine." But June's interest didn't fade. He started noticing things about her: the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she spoke, the way her hands never shook when she served tea, the calmness she carried even when everyone else looked nervous around him. He wasn't used to women like that. Most women he met were bold, flirtatious, and greedy for his attention. Elena was the opposite. And that was what drew him in. Kang could feel it. He didn't need eyes to know what was happening. He heard it in their voices, in the way June's tone softened when he spoke to her, in the way Elena's silence lasted a little longer than usual when he was around. One evening, as Elena poured his tea, Kang asked quietly, "Did June come again today?" "Yes," she replied. "What did he want?" "He said he came to drop off some documents." Kang's jaw tightened. "He can send people for that." "I think he wanted to see you," Elena said gently. Kang turned his head slightly toward her. "He didn't see me. He saw you." The silence that followed was heavy. Elena didn't deny it. She didn't know what to say. That night, Kang sat in the dark again, thinking about things he didn't want to think about. June's laugh. Elena's voice. The two sounds didn't belong in the same room, not in his house. He hated that it bothered him. He hated that he cared. He hated that his blindness made him feel powerless. For years, everyone had feared him. Now, he couldn't even stop his brother from looking at the one person who made him feel alive again. The next few days were quiet. Kang spoke less. He stopped responding when Elena tried to talk. He started skipping meals again. Elena noticed. She tried to ask what was wrong, but he brushed her off every time. She didn't understand what she had done. One afternoon, while Kang was asleep in his study, she stepped out to get his medicine from the hallway cabinet. That was when June arrived. He walked in without warning, hands in his pockets, a faint smile on his lips. "You look tired," he said to her. She turned, startled. "Mr. June." "Relax," he said, smiling. "I'm not here for anything serious. Just wanted to see how things are." Elena nodded politely and tried to walk past him. But June moved closer, stopping her with his words. "You know," he said quietly, "it's strange. I've seen hundreds of people come and go in this house, but none of them ever changed the atmosphere like you did." She didn't answer. He took a step closer. "He's lucky to have someone like you looking after him." Elena stepped back slightly. "I should go. He'll wake up soon." June smiled faintly. "Of course." He didn't stop her, but his eyes followed her as she walked away. That evening, Kang woke up and asked, "Was June here?" "Yes," she said. "What did he say?" "Nothing important." Kang turned his face away and didn't speak again for the rest of the night. The following week, June's visits became routine. He brought food, flowers, gifts, all things King didn't ask for. He'd sit for hours, chatting casually, and always managed to steal small conversations with Elena when Kang wasn't paying attention. Elena tried to keep her distance, but June's charm made it difficult to push him away without seeming rude. He wasn't forceful, not yet. But his eyes said more than his words. Kang began to sense it more clearly each day. He'd noticed the faint change in Elena's breathing whenever June was near. The pause in her steps when she heard his voice. He didn't need sight to know that something was changing. Late one night, Kang sat alone in his room, holding a glass of whiskey. He could hear Elena cleaning in the next room, her light footsteps, the sound of fabric brushing against the floor. It calmed him. Until he remembered how June had spoken to her that afternoon, casually, easily, without hesitation. He gripped the glass tightly. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel powerful. He felt small. He felt like the world was slipping from his hands all over again. He didn't realize that Elena, too, was beginning to feel trapped, not between two brothers, but between her sense of duty and the slow, unspoken emotions she couldn't name. She didn't know how it started, the ache she felt when Kang ignored her, the quiet pull she felt toward him, even though he never smiled, never looked at her. She didn't know it yet. But the walls of that house were about to hold secrets neither of them could hide for long. Because June's interest was no longer innocent. And Kang's silence was no longer calm. The days grew quieter after June's last visit. He didn't come around as often. At first, Kang was relieved. Then he began to notice something else. Elena had changed. She no longer spoke as much. Her movements were slower, her laughter gone. She looked like someone carrying a weight she couldn't put down. Kang noticed the way she'd avoid sitting close to him now, or how she'd keep her eyes low whenever he called her name. He didn't understand it, but he felt it. Something wasn't right. He hated the silence that had settled between them. One morning, while Elena was preparing his breakfast, Kang broke it. "Elena," he said quietly, his tone sharp but unsure. "Yes, sir?" He turned slightly toward her voice. "Have I done something to make you uncomfortable lately?" She froze for a moment, still holding the tray. "No," she whispered. Kang tilted his head. "You've changed." Elena forced a small smile he couldn't see. "I'm just tired." "Don't lie to me," he said, voice low, firm. She didn't reply. Kang exhaled, leaning back on the couch. "I may not see," he muttered, "but I'm not blind to people's hearts." Elena turned away quickly, afraid he'd hear the pain in her voice. "You're overthinking, sir." He didn't push further. But that was the first time he called her name again that night, not as an employer, but softly, carefully. "Elena." Her heart skipped. "Yes?" There was a pause. "I don't know how to explain this," Kang said slowly, "but you make the silence feel less empty." Her breath hitched. He continued, voice trembling slightly. I used to think the worst part of losing my sight was darkness. But now I realize it's losing the sense of what's worth living for. You brought that back somehow. Elena looked down, tears filling her eyes. Don't say that, she whispered. Why not? Because it'll hurt you. Kang frowned, confused. What do you mean? She shook her head. You shouldn't see me that way. Kang's lips tightened. I already do. The silence that followed was thick. Neither spoke again that night. Days later, June returned. He arrived unannounced, confident, smiling. Elena opened the door, her pulse racing the moment she saw him. He looked different, colder. His eyes didn't carry warmth anymore, only possession. Where's Kang? He asked. In his room, she replied softly. He nodded, stepping inside. You look pale, Elena. Are you sleeping well? She forced a weak smile. I'm fine. Lying doesn't suit you, he said, voice low. Before she could reply, June stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think I don't notice how he looks at you? How he talks about you? Her eyes widened. Please don't. He doesn't deserve you. June cut her off sharply. You spend every day helping him, feeding him, dressing him, yet he can't even see you. Elena froze. Don't say that. I'm saying the truth, he said, voice rising slightly. You deserve someone who can look at you and know your worth. She stepped back. Mr. June, please. He reached out suddenly, grabbing her wrist. Elena. He whispered, voice shaking. I tried to ignore it, but I can't anymore. I want you. Her voice trembled. Let go. But June didn't. What started as a whisper turned into a forceful confession, a desperate act he'd later call love. And that night, everything shattered. Elena didn't scream. She didn't run. She simply shut down, like a body without a soul. The next morning, she stood at the kitchen sink for hours, scrubbing an already clean dish. Her hands shook. Her eyes were red. Kang called her name 3 times before she answered. When she did, her voice was weak, distant. Yes, sir. He frowned. Are you crying? No. He could hear the lie. Elena, talk to me, he said softly. But she didn't. She only turned away and whispered. I'll bring your lunch soon. Kang sat there for a long time after she left. He could smell her perfume, faint, faded. Something about it felt wrong, empty. He clenched his fists. He didn't know what happened. But he knew something did. And deep inside, for the first time, Kang felt fear, not for himself, but for her. The house no longer felt alive. It was filled with sound, footsteps, dishes, voices, but all of it felt distant. Cold. Like a place that forgot what warmth was. Elena moved through it like a ghost. She didn't hum anymore while working. She didn't talk to Kang unless he asked something directly. Her hands trembled when she poured his tea. And Kang. He noticed everything. He noticed the soft gasps she tried to hide when she bent over. The way she would quietly leave the room when June's name was mentioned. The way she pressed her hands to her stomach once when she thought he couldn't hear. Something inside him twisted that day. He didn't have proof. But his instincts screamed the truth, one he didn't want to believe. That evening, Kang called her name as she arranged books near his bed. Elena. She froze. Yes, sir. Sit, he said quietly. She hesitated. I still have. Sit. She obeyed. He leaned forward slightly, his unseeing eyes fixed in her direction. You're hiding something, he said flatly. Her fingers tightened on her lap. No, I'm not. Don't lie to me, he said, voice trembling now. Your tone, your steps, your silence. It's not the same. You don't even breathe the same anymore. Tears welled in her eyes. Please don't ask, sir. Kang's chest rose and fell sharply. Why? Because it's about him? Her lips parted, but no words came out. Elena, Kang said slowly, his voice breaking for the first time. What did June do to you? Her tears fell silently. Kang's knuckles turned white as he gripped the edge of the chair. Elena, tell me. Her voice was barely a whisper. He took everything from me. The silence that followed shattered him. He didn't shout. He didn't move. He just sat there, frozen, pale, broken, as if the air had left his lungs. Then his voice came out hoarse, low, shaking with pain. When? The night he visited. Kang's hands trembled. His breathing became uneven. He clenched his jaw so tight it hurt. He touched what's mine? Elena looked down, sobbing. Don't say that. Please. But Kang didn't mean it in ownership, he meant it in heartbreak. She had been the only thing left that made his life feel worth something. He didn't say another word. He just sat in silence, long, unbearable silence, until the air in the room turned heavy. When Elena stood to leave, Kang whispered, "Did he hurt you?" She nodded once. Kang exhaled, and in that breath, something inside him died. The next morning, June returned. Unlike before, he didn't sneak glances or hide behind politeness. He walked into Kang's room with a proud smile. "Hyung," he began casually, pulling out a chair beside him. "There's something I should tell you." Kang didn't reply. June continued. "Elena is mine now." Kang's jaw tightened. June smirked. "I came to make things clear. She won't be attending to you anymore. She'll live with me soon." Kang said nothing. He just sat there, his expression empty. "Oh, and..." June leaned closer, lowering his voice. "She's pregnant." The room went silent. Elena stood near the door, shaking, her face pale. She didn't speak, she couldn't. Kang's fingers dug into the armrest. His lips trembled. But he didn't scream. He didn't hit. He just said one thing. "Get out." June smiled faintly. "I knew you'd be upset, but... get... out." The roar in Kang's voice shook the air. Even blind, his presence still carried the weight of a man who once ruled fear. June stood, smiling smugly. "You saved my life once," he said quietly. "Guess this is how fate repays debts." And then he left, without looking back. That night, Kang sat in the dark, the same darkness that had lived in him since the accident. But this one was heavier. It wasn't just blindness anymore. It was betrayal, humiliation, heartbreak. He sat still, remembering the day of the crash. The sound of metal. The scream. The glass. He had pushed June out of the driver's seat, saved him. Now that same life he saved had destroyed the only person who made his life bearable. He whispered to himself, "I should have let the car burn." Tears rolled down his cheeks, the first in years. The following week, the mansion changed. Kang stopped talking completely. He refused food. He spent nights awake, staring into emptiness. Elena tried to care for him, even with her trembling hands and swollen eyes. But every time she approached, he turned away, not because he hated her, but because he couldn't bear to hear her cry. One night, when she left his room, he whispered under his breath, "I'll make him pay." No one heard him. But June must have sensed it, because within days, orders were made. The gates were locked. The staff dismissed. And Kang was locked away in his own house. June had already begun telling the world that Kang's condition had worsened, that he had passed peacefully. But Kang wasn't dead. He was trapped. Waiting. Breathing. Planning. And in that silence, his revenge began.